Have you ever scrolled through your feed and felt that creeping sense of inadequacy? Someone's on a beach in Bali, another just bought a new car, someone else is showing off their perfect body, their perfect relationship, their perfect smile. You weren't unhappy before, not exactly, but now you feel small, lesser, as if your life is somehow behind. That slow ache in your chest, that's comparison, and it's one of the most destructive forces in the modern mind. But here's the thing, this isn't just a modern problem. Long before smartphones and social media, before influencers and algorithms, there was a philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer. He lived in 19th century Germany, and he understood this pain with piercing clarity. Schopenhauer wasn't one to sugarcoat life. He called existence a constant tug-of-war between desire and suffering. But he also believed something else, something most of us still ignore today. We will never be happy if we keep comparing ourselves to others, and yet, that's exactly what we keep doing. In the quiet moments of our day, over coffee, in traffic, late at night in bed, our minds drift. We compare our careers, our relationships, our appearance, even our suffering. We measure and measure, as if happiness were a contest, and fulfillment had to be earned by being better than someone else. But who told you that your value comes from being more than another? Who convinced you that your worth was relative? Schopenhauer believed the roots of human suffering lay in will, the endless, striving force inside us that always wants more. We want to be rich, then richer. We want love, then passion. We want recognition, then fame. But once we get what we desire, the pleasure fades and we begin to compare again. Someone else always seems to have more. He once wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free." Now pause, let that sink in. It's in solitude that we discover ourselves, not through the mirror of others, but by facing the silence within. But today, we rarely let ourselves be alone, truly alone. We fill the silence with noise, scrolling, watching, checking, always measuring. Comparison is not just a distraction, it's a form of self-torment. When we compare, we turn other people's lives into weapons we use against our own. You see someone's highlight reel, and your quiet, gentle life starts to feel inadequate. You forget your own victories, you overlook your peace, you neglect your growth, your healing, your stillness, all because someone else appears ahead. But Schopenhauer, with his grim but sharp outlook on life, would remind us that appearance is deceptive, that joy is not public, that the happiest people often say nothing, post nothing, and seek nothing from others. He knew that real contentment must come from within, from becoming indifferent to comparison, from seeing life not as a race but as a deeply personal journey. He said, "Envy is natural to man, and still more to those who are nearest to one another in age, position, or reputation. So the people you compare yourself to most often, they're probably the ones closest to your path, your peers, your old friends, your classmates. That's not a coincidence. That's a trap of the mind. We envy those who reflect what we could be, and this envy erodes the joy of what we are." Schopenhauer would ask, why measure yourself at all? Why tie your happiness to something so fragile, so fleeting? And yet we do, constantly. We compare bodies shaped by genetics. We compare minds shaped by trauma. We compare lives shaped by accidents, privilege, or pure luck, as if any of it were a fair comparison to begin with. But here's the truth. You will never be free until you let go of this need to measure. You will never be happy while using someone else's life as your ruler. You will never rest while chasing a mirage that disappears the moment you get closer. So, what's the alternative? Schopenhauer believed that suffering is a constant, but peace, true peace, comes from shifting your attention inward, from stepping out of the competition entirely, from cultivating a mind that no longer craves validation, applause, or envy. He believed in aesthetic contemplation, losing yourself in music, in art, in nature, moments where the self disappears, where you're not comparing, you're not lacking, you simply are, fully present. And in those moments, he said, we are most free from suffering. It's not about having more, it's not about being better, it's about needing less, wanting less, comparing less. Because ultimately, your life is not a stadium, it's a sanctuary. It is not meant to be judged by the cheers of a crowd, but lived by the quiet beat of your own heart. So the next time you feel that pain, that pull to compare, pause, gently return to yourself. Breathe, feel your body, recall how far you've come, not in relation to others, but in relation to yourself. You were not made to live someone else's life. You were not born to win someone else's game. You are not behind. You are not less. You are only lost when you stop being present in your own journey. Let Schopenhauer's voice remind you, happiness is not found in being the best. It is found in being free. And freedom begins the moment you stop comparing. We live in a time of abundance, food, information, entertainment, even connection. It's all available at the swipe of a screen, and yet, never have people felt more inadequate, more anxious, more lost. Why? Because the abundance around us is not what torments us. It's the illusion that others are living it better. In Schopenhauer's view, human beings are driven by what he called the will to life, an unconscious, blind force that keeps us striving, wanting, reaching. It never rests, it never says enough, and when left unchecked, this will becomes the root of all suffering. Now imagine this force in a world like ours, where everyone's life is on display, filtered, polished, carefully curated. Social media is not just a technology, it's a global stage for comparison. You open your phone, and within minutes, you've been shown dozens of lives supposedly better than your own. Someone's married, someone's rich, someone's traveling, someone's more beautiful than you. But what you're seeing is not truth, it's a performance. And yet the mind reacts as if it's real, as if this comparison has weight, as if it says something about you. Schopenhauer warned of this, though. He lived long before Instagram. His insights were prophetic. He wrote, "We often envy others for the very things that, if we had them, would not make us happy." And this is the trap, the great illusion. We believe that if we had what someone else has, we'd be fulfilled. But desire is a mirage. It leads us into the desert, promises us an oasis, and when we arrive, it disappears, only to appear again in the distance. They will always find something else to chase. So the man with money wants more. The woman with beauty fears losing it. The successful one is haunted by the idea of failure. And even the happiest looking person online may be drowning in silence, in pain, in a life they do not even enjoy. But you don't see that. You only see the surface. Schopenhauer compared this craving to a pendulum, swinging between pain and boredom. When we lack something, we suffer. When we gain it, we feel empty again. And so the pendulum swings, from desire to disappointment, back and forth, endlessly. Comparison only accelerates that swing. It gives you new things to want, not because they bring meaning, but because someone else appears to have them. And that appearance is a lie. Consider this. You see a friend buying a house, you feel behind, but maybe they're drowning in debt. Maybe they cry at night wondering if they made a mistake. You see someone glowing in a photo with their partner, you feel unloved, but maybe they haven't spoken honestly to each other in months. You see a stranger with a perfect body, and you feel ashamed, but you don't see their eating disorder. You don't see their loneliness. You don't see the cost. This is the truth. Comparison hides. No one escapes suffering. Schopenhauer was blunt about it. He believed that pain is not the exception in life. It is the rule. And the moment you compare, you forget that. You assume others have found the secret you're missing, but they haven't. They're just like you, searching, striving, masking. But the illusion is powerful, and it leads us to ruin. Because when you compare, two things happen. You distort reality. You lose gratitude. Reality becomes warped. You no longer see your life clearly. Your accomplishments feel smaller. Your joy feels less valid. Your identity starts to dissolve, because it's being measured against something that was never real to begin with. And gratitude, the one thing that grounds us, becomes impossible. You can't be thankful for your meal when you're wishing it looked like someone else's. You can't love your partner when your mind is trapped in someone else's romance. You can't enjoy your pace in life when you believe others are sprinting ahead. So what does Schopenhauer offer in response? Not blind optimism, not motivational slogans. He offers acceptance. He tells us, life is suffering, desire is endless, the will is irrational, but freedom lies in seeing through it all, in detaching from the illusion. He encourages solitude, simplicity, a life that is not shaped by envy or ambition, but by stillness and self-awareness. He believed that to compare is to forget yourself, and forgetting yourself is the greatest tragedy of all, because you were not born to live someone else's story. You were born to live yours, fully, truthfully, and without apology, even if it's quieter, even if it's slower, even if it doesn't look impressive to anyone else. Let's return to this quote. A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants. This means your desires, your comparisons, may not be chosen. They may arise on their own, shaped by biology, culture, or fear, but you can become aware of them. You can observe them without obeying them. And that is where freedom begins. The person who sees a luxury car and doesn't feel inferior, they are free. The person who sees beauty and doesn't feel lacking, they are free. The person who watches others succeed and feels peace instead of panic, they have reclaimed their life from comparison. You can become that person, not through striving, but through letting go. Letting go of the idea that happiness lives somewhere else. Letting go of the lie that more is better. Letting go of the fantasy that someone else's joy means the absence of pain. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore how Schopenhauer believed we can find lasting contentment, not by chasing, but by retreating, not by becoming more, but by needing less, not by measuring life, but by being fully present in it, because happiness isn't found at the end of a scoreboard. It's found the moment you stop keeping score. It's a strange thing, how much of our lives we spend pretending we're okay, pretending we're in control, pretending we don't feel small when we see someone else succeed, and perhaps most of all, pretending we don't care what others think, but we do, and it's not always our fault. From the moment we're born, we're placed in systems that reward visibility, praise, and applause. Our value is tied to grades, medals, likes, promotions, and so, without realizing it, we begin to live for the gaze of others. This is what Arthur Schopenhauer called the tyranny of appearances. The illusion that how things look is more important than what they are. You don't need to be content, just look successful. You don't need to be wise, just sound smart. You don't need to be happy, just smile on camera. But this tyranny comes at a cost. You begin to abandon your inner life, the real, messy, beautiful truth of who you are, and replace it with a mask, a performance, something digestible and polished for public approval. And then, slowly, you lose touch with yourself. Schopenhauer warned of this trap. He believed that the more we depend on others to define our worth, the further we drift from authentic peace. He wrote, "The more a man has in himself, the less he will want from other people." Think about that. The person who is rich inwardly, in thought, in understanding, in contentment, does not need constant reminders of their value. They do not crave applause. They do not measure their joy by visibility. They live from the inside out, not the outside in. But comparison, especially in today's world, reverses this. We begin living from the outside in. You don't ask yourself how you feel, you ask how you appear. You don't seek alignment, you seek approval, and it's exhausting, because the crowd is never satisfied. The world's gaze is always shifting. One day you're celebrated, the next day you're forgotten. One day you're praised, the next day you're replaced, and so you keep running, faster, louder, shinier, trying to be more, show more, post more. But Schopenhauer reminds us, this is not life, this is slavery. The moment you allow your value to be determined by appearance, you hand your peace over to the crowd. And worse, you begin to compare your inner world to other people's outer one. You compare your sadness to someone's smile, your confusion to someone's clarity, your silence to someone's speech. But you forget, you are not seeing their truth. You are seeing their mask. And what kind of fairness is that? Imagine a musician comparing their quiet, intimate practice sessions to a polished stage performance of another. Imagine a monk judging his solitude against a politician's applause. The comparison is not only false, it is unjust, because no one's inner world is visible, not really. And yet it is the only place where meaning lives. Schopenhauer believed that the key to happiness was not to chase public success, but to cultivate a rich inner life. He didn't romanticize the world. He saw it as it was, full of noise, competition, pain. But he offered a way out: retreat inward, find peace in solitude, learn to see appearances for what they are, masks, not mirrors. He wrote, "A man must have a certain amount of solitude if he is to be fully himself, and in solitude, the noise of the world fades, the applause dies out, the performance ends, and what's left is truth, your truth. It might not be glamorous, it might not be admired, but it will be real. And in a world addicted to appearances, reality is a quiet rebellion. So how do you begin? Not by deleting every app or escaping to a monastery, but by noticing, by becoming aware. By watching gently how often your choices are shaped not by desire, but by image. You dress not for yourself, but for how it will be seen. You speak not your truth, but what you think they want to hear. You set goals not from your soul, but from social pressure. And slowly, you begin to forget who you were before the world told you who to be. But you can return, through silence. Through stillness, through honesty. You begin to ask different questions. Not how do I look, but how do I feel? Not will they be impressed, but am I at peace? Not am I ahead, but am I aligned? And when you live that way, not for appearance, but for truth, you stop comparing, because there's nothing to compare anymore. There's only your path, your rhythm, your meaning. That is what Schopenhauer invites us into, not a perfect life, not a popular one, but an authentic one, free from the tyranny of appearances. It's not always easy. The crowd is loud, the urge to compare is strong, the temptation to perform never disappears. But the more you return to yourself, your quiet, honest self, the more you see clearly. No one is really ahead. No one is really behind. Everyone is just playing a role they didn't write, in a world they can't control. But you can choose to step off that stage. You can stop performing. You can stop measuring. You can stop comparing. And in that decision, that quiet, radical decision, you begin to reclaim your life, not as something to be envied, not as something to be proven, but as something to be lived, exactly as it is. In a world driven by images and illusions, it is easy to forget the most important form of wealth, inner wealth. We are taught to chase external things, money, status, followers, success, and yet all of these exist outside of us. They are subject to loss, to time, to the judgment of others. You may gain the whole world and still feel hollow inside. Arthur Schopenhauer called this out more than a century ago. He believed that the richest man is not the one with the most possessions, but the one who needs the least. Not the one who is envied, but the one who no longer envies, because there is a kind of quiet, indestructible joy that lives within, when you no longer rely on comparison to define your value. But here's the problem. Comparison steals this inner wealth. Every time you look at someone else and feel less than, you are not just harming your pride. You are draining your soul of its own quiet satisfaction. You are forgetting what is already good in your life. You are overlooking the beauty that is already yours. You are turning your gaze outward, while the treasure lies within. Schopenhauer wrote, "Happiness belongs to those who are sufficient unto themselves, for all external sources of happiness and enjoyment are, by their very nature, highly uncertain, precarious, ephemeral, and subject to chance." In other words, anything you chase outside of yourself can vanish. Fortune can turn, beauty fades, relationships shift, the applause eventually stops. But the peace that comes from knowing who you are, without comparison, without judgment, that is yours, and it cannot be taken by the world. This is why Schopenhauer placed such high value on solitude. In solitude, you stop performing. In solitude, you stop comparing. In solitude, you are not better or worse than anyone else. You simply are. And if you can be content there, with your thoughts, with your silence, with your imperfect self, then you have found something most never do. You have found inner freedom. But comparison is cunning. It slips in quietly. You don't always realize it's happening. One moment, you're content. The next, you see someone doing more, looking better, earning praise, and suddenly, your peace begins to erode. Not because your life changed, but because you imagine theirs did. It's important to remember, the imagination is dangerous when it is unguarded. You imagine someone's smile means they're happy. You imagine someone's wealth means they're secure. You imagine someone's success means they're at peace. But this is not knowledge. This is projection. And every projection distances you from your own truth. You begin to forget your victories. You minimize your progress. You ignore the strength it took to survive what you never told anyone about. Because someone else seems ahead. But what are they ahead in? And who decided it was a race? Schopenhauer challenges us to look at life differently, not as a competition, but as a private pilgrimage, inward, not outward. He believed that true happiness comes not from acquisition, but from contemplation. He wrote, "The greatest of follies is to sacrifice health for any other kind of happiness." And by health, he didn't just mean physical well-being. He meant mental calmness, inner quiet, psychological peace, things comparison will always threaten. So what can you do? How do you protect your inner wealth in a world that constantly invites you to compare? You begin by noticing, by cultivating awareness. The next time you scroll through social media and feel that pang of inadequacy, pause. The next time you see someone's achievement and feel smaller, breathe. The next time you find yourself judging your life by another's, return, gently, quietly, to your own path. You say to yourself, "This is my life. My pace. My journey. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's to be meaningful." Because here's the truth that Schopenhauer knew, and we often forget. The more unique your path, the fewer people will understand it, and the more you compare, the more you will dilute that uniqueness. Comparison leads to imitation. Imitation leads to inauthenticity. And inauthenticity leads to misery. So protect your truth, even if it's not impressive, even if it's slow, even if no one claps for it. Schopenhauer didn't believe life was easy, but he believed it could be authentic if we stopped looking outward and began nourishing our minds, our intellect, our inner sense of peace. Read more, think more, reflect more, create, walk, sit in silence. Let go of the endless scroll. Let go of the scoreboard. You are not meant to be the best version of someone else. You are meant to be the clearest version of yourself. That's what inner wealth really is, clarity. Calm. Contentment. Not borrowed from the world. Not granted by comparison, but found again and again in the quiet space beneath all the noise. So ask yourself, what do you truly want? What do you truly value? And who are you when no one's watching? The answers to those questions are more valuable than any trophy, any title, any temporary high. You don't need to be more to be at peace. You just need to remember what comparison made you forget, that what you have within you, your mind, your soul, your presence, is already enough. And it always was. What if you could look at the world, truly look, and not measure yourself against it? Not judge. Not rank, not shrink when someone else seems taller, not burn when someone else shines. Just see. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that most of our suffering does not come from life itself, but from the way we perceive it, through filters of comparison, desire, and fear, and the most damaging filter of all, measurement. In our minds, we are constantly measuring. Who's ahead? Who's behind? Am I doing enough? Am I enough? But measurement is not truth. It is abstraction. It is the mind's way of turning life into a scoreboard, one that's always tilted against you. Schopenhauer, in his dark but clear-sighted view of life, pointed out that human beings, by nature, are insatiable, always striving, always needing contrast to feel value. But this striving becomes poison the moment it turns inward. When we start measuring ourselves, not by who we were yesterday, but by who someone else appears to be today. We lose clarity. And without clarity, we cannot be content. But what does it mean to see without measuring? It means you walk into the world, and instead of asking, how do I compare to them? You ask, what does this moment reveal about me? It means when someone shares their success, you don't shrink into jealousy or shame. You recognize their journey as separate, not superior, just different. It means that when someone's beauty catches your eye, you don't turn against yourself. You simply admire, without identifying, without diminishing your own. It means you stop trying to win a race that has no finish line and no real rules. Schopenhauer believed in a concept he called aesthetic perception, the ability to experience something without desire, without will, just presence. He used the example of looking at a painting or listening to music. In those moments, if you're fully present, you are not thinking about what you lack. You are not comparing. You are not measuring. You are simply immersed, free from want, free from self. And in that immersion, he believed, we experience the closest thing to happiness, because desire always pulls us into the future, but presence anchors us in the now. And when you stop measuring, even for a moment, you return to now. So imagine what your life would feel like if you practiced seeing without measuring, waking up without immediately wondering how productive your day will be, talking to a friend without trying to prove anything, looking in the mirror and simply witnessing your face, your eyes, your aging, without judgment, without longing for someone else's. This isn't apathy. It's not laziness. It's not the absence of growth. It's the presence of clarity. Because you cannot grow in a meaningful way if you're always comparing your soil to someone else's garden. You cannot hear your intuition if you're drowning in someone else's applause. You cannot be at peace if you only feel valuable when you measure up. The truth is, there is no final measurement. No number of likes, dollars, degrees, or compliments will silence the comparison, because the habit is internal, not external. And that's where the work must begin. Schopenhauer suggested a life of simplicity, reflection, intellectual richness, and emotional detachment from worldly striving. In a world like ours, that sounds radical, even irresponsible. But what if it's actually the only sane response? Because if you can learn to see without measuring, even briefly, you will begin to notice the things that comparison made invisible. The softness of a morning breeze, the quiet dignity of your aging parents, the small victories you've had this week. The resilience you've shown that no one else knows about. The beauty of simply existing, even in imperfection. Comparison keeps us chasing the horizon, But Schopenhauer would remind us, you don't need the horizon to be beautiful, you just need to look where you are. And if you can do that, truly look, truly see, without evaluating, ranking, or competing, then you will understand what it means to live with a clear mind. Because in clarity, there is stillness. In stillness, there is sufficiency. And in sufficiency, there is peace. So how do you start? Not with a revolution, but with a breath. One breath where you stop measuring. One meal eaten without guilt or pride. One moment online where you see a post and feel nothing. No envy, no shame, just space. And over time, those moments build. They become your new rhythm, your new center. In comparison, it becomes a shadow, still there, still tempting, but no longer in control. Schopenhauer didn't offer escape from suffering. He offered understanding. And in understanding, there is relief. Because once you see the trap, you can stop walking into it. So start now. Look at your life, not through the eyes of the crowd, not through the mirror of someone else's success, but with quiet, honest presence. See it for what it is. Flawed, ordinary, beautiful, enough. And when you stop measuring it, you just might find it was never lacking at all. What would your life look like if you didn't compare yourself to anyone? No more mental scoreboard. No more measuring your worth by likes, by beauty, by success, by approval. Just a quiet, unshakable sense that you are enough as you are. For Arthur Schopenhauer, this freedom from comparison wasn't just desirable, it was essential. Because as long as your happiness depends on being more than someone else, more admired, more loved, more successful, then your peace is never truly yours. It is rented from the world, and the rent is due every day. Schopenhauer believed that the key to human liberation was not external achievement, but internal detachment, a letting go of the restless will, the constant craving to be someone, somewhere, or something other than what we already are. It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. We live in a culture that tells us the opposite, that happiness is out there, in comparison, in image, in praise. But Schopenhauer saw clearly, the more we chase outer validation, the more we lose ownership of our inner life. So how do we become free? First, we must become conscious of how deeply comparison shapes our lives. It happens in small, subtle ways. You hear a friend's promotion, and suddenly your job feels less meaningful. You see someone fit and glowing online, and suddenly your body feels inadequate. You watch someone traveling the world, and suddenly your quiet routine seems suffocating. But these are thoughts, not truths. They rise automatically, shaped by culture, ego, and fear. But they are not your wisdom. They are not your soul speaking. They are the echo of a world obsessed with being more. To become free, you must notice these thoughts without following them. Let them arise. Let them pass. Don't suppress them. But don't build your identity around them either. They are not you. You are the observer behind them. Quiet, steady, aware. Second, cultivate solitude, not isolation, not loneliness, but intentional stillness. Schopenhauer believed solitude was the birthplace of clarity. When we are alone, truly alone, we are no longer performing. We are no longer comparing. We are simply being, and in that state, something miraculous happens. We begin to hear our own voice again, not the voice of fear, not the voice of the crowd, but the quiet, original voice of our own soul, reminding us who we really are beneath the noise. Solitude teaches us that we don't need to be impressive. We just need to be real. Third, shift from envy to inspiration. When you see someone thriving, don't shrink. Don't turn it into a wound. Let it be a window. What can it show you about your own potential without making you feel small? What can you admire without needing to become? There is a kind of admiration that's clean, free from resentment, free from shame. It says, I honor your path, and I am at peace with my own. That's a mark of true maturity. Fourth, return to your definition of a good life, not society's, not your parents', not your past self. Single quotes yours. What matters to you? What kind of days make you feel alive? What kind of relationships make you feel nourished? What kind of silence brings you peace? Comparison makes us forget our own values. It hijacks our goals. It pushes us toward lives that were never meant for us. But freedom is remembering. You are allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to want less. You are allowed to find joy in things that no one claps for. Because the truth is, no one else has to understand your life, only you do. And finally, practice contentment. Contentment is not complacency. It is not laziness. It is the radical decision to be present. To say, what I have, in this moment, is enough, not forever, not in some fake spiritual bypassing way, but enough for now. Because when you feel enough in the now, you stop seeking salvation in someone else's life. And when you stop seeking salvation in someone else's life, you stop comparing. And when you stop comparing, you come home to yourself. Schopenhauer believed that peace was possible, but only for the one who detached from illusion. Comparison is an illusion. It's built on the lie that worth can be measured, that someone else's light dims your own, that there's a single ladder of success and we're all climbing it. But there is no ladder. There is only your path, and your presence to walk it with grace. So breathe. Slow down. Look inward, not to fix yourself, but to see clearly the beauty that comparison made invisible. Your thoughts, your resilience, your mind. Your gentleness. Your spirit. These are things no algorithm can measure, no audience can rank, no external voice can validate. They are yours. They always were. Let that be enough. Because once you stop comparing, once you stop needing to be more, once you remember that peace is an inside job, you become free.